It's your number one indie radio chick, Tonya B, and I want you to join me every Friday and Saturday, 8 and 10 p.m. Eastern Time, and Saturday at noon Eastern Time for the Byrdwire. It is hands down, bar none, the undisputed home of the best new and classic indie music. I've got new indie tracks from every corner of the globe. R&B, Southern Soul, clean hip-hop, and even a splash of smooth jazz. So come on, get in, get on, and get heard. Come fly with your girl on the Byrdwire, right here on the Castropolis Podcast Network.
The next time you drive through Central Georgia, we've got a radio station we think you'll love. We're Magic 100, playing all of the songs you grew up with. You'll find us at 100.1 FM. That's 100.1. On I-75, you can tune us in from the north at Locust Grove and from the south when you get to Perry. 100.1 FM. Classic soul hits. Magic 100.
This is the G Podcast with your host, Tommy B.
Hey, what's up, y'all? This is episode 168 of This is the G Podcast. Yes, I am here, Tommy B. And the cast is around. You'll hear them on this show. Everybody, well, everybody's listening. Everybody's around. So, who would believe that it's 46 degrees today in Georgia and the day before spring, and we're under a freeze warning? Who would believe that? But anyway, it's Women's History Month, and this week we have a very special guest, the Honorable Judge Kellie S. Hill, Superior Court of Cobb, Justice. Well, I want to call her Justice, and she says, no, I'm not there yet. But Judge Hill was one of the first Black women elected to Superior Court in Cobb, elected in 2020. She's a graduate. And I want to make sure, Judge Hill, are you there?
I am here. How are you, Tommy?
I am great. Thank you so much for taking the time. You're a graduate of the University of Pennsylvania, am I correct?
That's correct, yes.
And unfortunately, Rutgers, which is your law school, didn't make it into the NCAA tourney this year.
We didn't.
But the great thing is you're in Cobb County and Kennesaw State did. So let's take a moment for your Cobb County people and just say congratulations.
Congratulations to the Owls. That's right.
Absolutely. And I know you got to be happy about that. They were not expected to win. They were on the verge of winning. It would have been a big upset. But what a game. They played it close. So you got to give it. That is Cobb County. That is your area. So
that is Cobb County. That is the new Cobb County.
Absolutely. So let me give it up to them one more time. And again, the Fighting Owls put in a great effort against Xavier. So
they did, and congrats to them.
Absolutely.
For a good game.
Yes, they did. And she's a New Jersey native. And I'm pleased to have Judge Kellie Hill on for making a stop on the G Podcast. And I have to say it before we get into the questions. What a time to be on the court in America. What a time to be working in the justice system, Your Honor. What an amazing time. I'm sure you have some stories to tell. I know you can't address a lot of what we talk about on the show, but, you're here for your great work and the things you've done in your career. And the glass ceiling you have shattered over in Cobb County. So I won't put you in harm's way. I'm not going to do the gotcha.
Well, I appreciate that. I do. I will absolutely answer as much as I can. Yes. And, I will tell you, there's never a dull moment.
I bet.
Never, ever a dull moment on the bench.
I can imagine. And it's crazy. And one more thing before we get into questioning, and I know you don't have to address this, but as I sit, we tape on Sunday. So as I sit and I watch the Sunday shows, it's amazing that we're about to put, or I don't know if it's going to happen this week or not, a former president facing indictment. I mean, this is a real possibility in the United States of America. And it is just, as we tape on Sunday, it's an incredible thing to witness. So we'll see what this week brings. Week brings.
Yeah. We're waiting in uncharted territory.
Yes, we are. And again, this is the G Podcast. Each week we do news, politics, pop culture. Tonya B is out, but she did get the tea to us, and we'll bring you the tea soon, later in the show. But Judge Hill, we've seen the confirmation of the first Black Supreme Court Justice in Ketanji Brown Jackson. Black female DAs are involved in high-profile cases. You've got Letitia James in New York, Fonnie Willis in Fulton County as examples, cases that are really democracy-defending type cases. And in my lifetime, I mean, probably the most I've ever seen Black women leading in the country. How do you view your role and responsibility during these times?
So, Tommy, you're right. For the first time in history, we do have Black women in spaces where we have not traditionally been. And if you ask me how I see my role, now that I am in the quote unquote room, I see my role as one, not just being present in that proverbial room, but to pull up my chair, sit at the table. My role is to be part of that conversation. I see my role as being one to highlight and bring to the conversation a perspective that is maybe different from the traditional conversation, a perspective that might cause those of us in the room to think that perhaps the way we have traditionally done things or the way we have traditionally viewed things might need to be changed. Now that there is a different perspective included in the conversation. And how do I see my role? I see my role as being one to explain situations through a lens that perhaps had not been viewed before, and simply because it was not the experience or the perspective of those who were traditionally in that room. So that perspective was never considered. My role is to make sure that it is now considered.
Right. So you're an elected official.
I am absolutely an elected official. I was elected. I was not appointed to serve. And
so you have constituents who are probably calling you and sending you messages daily.
So I do have constituents. I cannot speak to constituents about specific issues, but yes, even if they don't call me, I'm in my community. I am out and about. I participate in community events. I want to connect to the community that I serve. And so I see it as my role to make sure that that community and the members of that community that historically haven't really had a voice have an opportunity to have their views and their issues and their perspectives be part of the conversation so that change can be made for the betterment of all citizens here in our community in Cobb.
Excellent. And we're a Black podcast, so many weeks, when we do this show, unfortunately, and I say that because, it wears heavy, we felt justice has been denied or wrongly applied. What do you say to skeptics of the legal system?
So let me start by saying this. I'm a judge, right? And I've either been a judge or a lawyer for over 30 years now, which means I'm part of the system. And so I have to say, from my perspective, one, I am a firm believer in justice. And I know that in most cases, having been part of the system works as it should, believe it or not. Now, having said that, I know that there are some cases where the system does not or has not worked the way justice would require it to work. And in those situations, unfortunately, those are the cases that get highlighted. Those are the cases that are in the media. So those are the cases that draw the attention of the public. And that is why I understand that there are skeptics. I understand that there are people who question whether or not justice actually prevails in our system. And so while I understand it, I want those who are skeptical to know from someone who has been part of this system for over 30 years now. In most cases, our system does in fact work.
Okay. You've been involved in many high-profile cases, one being the infamous Brian Nichols case. That's one of many. Which are the cases when you take a look at your history, not necessarily as a judge, we're looking back as a prosecutor in those circumstances where you're in the courtroom, which one has had the most impact on you personally?
So you mentioned Nichols, and I'll talk about Nichols for a second, just because that's the one that most people will bring up when I am in a conversation. And I was the lead prosecutor in the prosecution of the murder case. I was not involved in the initial rape trial that was going on when the shooting incident occurred.
Can you give people, kind of frame it for people?
Sure.
How he was up for actually the crime of rape initially. So
that is correct.
How would you frame that situation with Nichols?
So Nichols was initially on trial for the rape of a woman that he had been involved in a relationship with. And the initial rape trial ended in a hung jury. It was a mistrial. The jury, they hung. They couldn't reach a verdict. Right after the hung jury, Nichols and his attorney asked the judge to allow him a bond so that he could be out while the prosecutor decided whether or not they were going to proceed again to trial or resolve the case short of a trial. And instead of granting a bond, the judge had the court reporter prepare the transcript of the previous case, and they teed up the second trial almost immediately. So his bond was denied, and he was put back on trial the second time for rape. And one thing that happens when there's a mistrial is now there's a record. And Nichols testified in the first rape case, which means he's on record of giving answers to questions that were asked in that first trial. Well, as in anything, when you get a second bite at the apple, you now know where your holes are. You know where your weaknesses are. And the prosecution had an opportunity to kind of tighten up those holes. And they did that second go round. They added witnesses that perhaps they had not called in the first go round, one of which was Nichols' boss. And they were able to show through those witnesses that testimony Nichols had given in the previous trial was in fact not true. So they went through that second trial Monday through Thursday of that week. Friday, which was March 11th, rolled around, and it was going to be the day where the state rested. And Nichols then had to make a decision on whether he was going to testify the second go round and potentially be caught in lies, or if he was not going to testify, and in which case the case was going to the jury and the state had put up a much stronger case the second time than they did the first time. So he was kind of caught in between a rock and a hard place, having to make a decision. So that morning, when he was being escorted upstairs to change out of his prison blues into his suit for trial, he made a decision, and that decision was to attack the female deputy that was bringing him up to change out.
Wow.
And he beat her to a pulp, took her gun, took her radio, took her handcuffs, and walked. Once he changed into his clothes, he walked over to the judge's chambers, held the judge's staff at gunpoint. And what he didn't know is that the judge had heard a civil case, totally unrelated to his trial that morning. And so the judge was not in chambers, the judge was in the courtroom. And in most courtrooms, whatever's happening in the courtroom is piped into chambers. So he could hear that the judge was in the courtroom. He waited a while, holding the staff captive. And what he didn't know is one of the staff members had hit the emergency button. So now there were deputies responding to the chambers. What those deputies didn't know was that because Nichols had taken that first deputy that he beat, he had taken her radio. So he could hear the traffic on that radio, and he knew that they were responding to the judge's chambers. So now he did what he had planned to do, which was he went into the courtroom, and while the judge was on the bench in the middle of a legal argument, put the gun to the judge's head, pulled the trigger, and literally blew the judge's brains out.
Wow.
The court reporter who was seated down in front of the judge was also shot and killed there in the courtroom. Staff attorney was grazed by a bullet, but by the grace of God, lived to tell it. And then Nichols escaped from Chambers, walked across the bridge where he ran into deputies who were responding to Chambers. They had no idea what had just happened. They had no idea who he was.
Wow.
And he said to them, hey, man, y'all need to get over there because something's going down over in that courtroom. They ran right past him as he made his exit down a back stairwell. But he encountered a deputy who had just come on duty. And that deputy ran into Nichols trying to run out of the back door. And he shot and killed that deputy there on the street.
Wow.
Ran across the street to a parking lot where lawyers and citizens were about to start their day, coming into work or coming into court, and he carjacked one of the lawyers, took the vehicle. But because he had that radio, he could hear when the car lookout had been put on the radio. So he knew that they were going to find him in that car. So he ditched that car and carjacked another car. He carjacked a total of about 7 people that morning. He held several other people at gunpoint in parking lots to take their car and or their clothing. He took a AJC reporter's jacket so that he could switch out from his jacket. He rode a MARTA train to Buckhead and hid out in a hotel there at Lenox and confronted one woman who lived in an apartment complex right next to Lenox. He was about to kidnap her, except he didn't know her boyfriend was in the apartment. So the boyfriend comes out, confronts Nichols. By now, Nichols knows that, everybody's looking for him. So instead of having a confrontation there in the hallway, he escaped and he hid out until cover of dark. And there was one house in that neighborhood where the light was on. In that house was a man who happened to be a federal agent. He was doing some tile work in his bathroom because he and his wife were about to move into their dream home. And he worked late that night to kind of do some tile work in the bathroom.
Right.
Nichols saw the light. There was a truck in the driveway. He went in, confronted the man who was up on a ladder and shot him. Went through his pockets, took his badge, took his keys to his truck, took that truck to Gwinnett County, where he sat in an apartment complex.
And by the way, all this started in Fulton County. Am I correct?
This all started in the Fulton County courthouse.
Yeah.
And he then held that woman captive. And that is the story of the woman who, the movie Captive. If you remember, there was a movie made not too long ago. But that's the story that is covered in that movie when he held the woman up in Gwinnett County captive. Wow. And eventually she was able to calm him. And eventually he was surrendered to the police, taken into custody, and then stood trial for the murder case, which I prosecuted along with several other team members. So that's the backdrop of the Nichols case. And I'll tell you, when the incident occurred, when the shooting occurred, I was there at work that day in my office. And I happened to be one of the first prosecutors assigned to Judge Roland Barnes, who was the judge who was murdered that day. I was one of his first prosecutors when he was appointed to the bench.
Wow.
And I knew him and I knew his staff. And I also knew that my boss tended to have high profile cases come across my desk.
Right.
So I asked him not to put me on that case.
Wow. Why is that?
Well, it was just one of those things that was too close to home for me. I knew everybody.
Yeah.
And I will say that DA Howard did not put me on that case for years. And it wasn't until the last 30 days before trial was about to start that I got called into his office. And he told me that he needed me to not only help try the case, but he needed me to take over and be lead. So at that point, duty called and I did what I had to do. I had to try a case where I knew some of the folks. Happened in a courtroom that I had been assigned to. It happened in a courthouse where I reported to work every day. And so as a person, it was traumatic. It was very emotionally taxing to have to, one, get up to speed on a case in such a short period of time, but two, present facts to a jury involving individuals that I knew personally. But professionally, it was my job, and I had a job to do, and I did it.
Yeah.
Notwithstanding those personal feelings, but that's the case that most people want to talk about.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you, because you've got one more you want to talk about, but I want to ask you before we move away from that.
Sure.
A lot of precedent, do you think, was set in that case?
Yes.
And we don't have to go into because we could do an entire podcast.
We absolutely could. We could have an entire podcast on just this case.
Yes.
But you know what?
Wow.
One thing,
just amazing.
it's kind of like 9/11. Remember, before 9/11, you could go to the airport, you could bring your water bottle.
Yes.
There were just certain things that changed as a result of 9/11. And I kind of liken the Nichols case to 9/11. The security in courthouses have changed as a result of this case.
Wow.
So yes, a lot of precedent was set as a result of this. And the security, the sanctity that one used to feel in a courthouse, kind of like you feel or used to feel in church, has changed.
Yeah.
It's just not there anymore. And this case was a significant factor.
Well, he's in jail at this point, serving hundreds and hundreds of years, and without parole.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, moving on from that case to the one, another case you've been impacted personally by.
Yeah, it's a case that most people honestly don't ask me about, but for me, it was it wasn't the only, but it was one of the most impactful cases in my career. And that was the case of the state of Georgia versus Jamil Al-Amin, also known as H. Rap Brown. Again, I was part of a prosecution team, and another instance where my boss kind of put me on at the last minute. But I will tell you, and for those folks who don't know who Jamil Al-Amin is, or H. Rap Brown, he's a civil rights activist, director of SNCC, former Black Panther, and then, came here to Atlanta and became the imam over in the West End, where he was very highly regarded.
Right.
And I will tell you, when that file first came across my desk, my initial reaction was, oh no, I'm not doing this. I can't do this. And at the time, I was relatively still a young prosecutor, I think maybe practicing about 10 years. And my thought was, I can't prosecute this case, but for people like this, I would not be able to do the job that I do.
Right. Wow.
And that was not lost on me. But I remember I got up to go down to tell my boss I couldn't do it. And, I stopped and I went back to my desk and I sat down and I started looking through the case file. And then I saw who my victims were. My victims were two young Black men. My victims had young Black children and Black widows, and a wife who now had a husband who had to live with a very serious wound because he survived the attack.
Wow.
So, as I started contemplating that, I went from, this case is not about Black and white. This is not about civil rights. This is about right and wrong.
Yeah.
And, I will tell you, this case was impactful to me because it was the first time that I personally had been contacted by members of the community and questioned about my Blackness.
Wow.
And, how I could prosecute an individual such as H. Rap Brown, also known as Imam Jamil Al-Amin. And, I would show up in court and the new Black Panthers would be there and they would question me. And so it was impactful to me because I understood And I still understand how it can be viewed by individuals on the outside looking in. But after being introspective and after talking to those who survived this attack, who had no idea who this man was when they first approached him, it was not about a governmental conspiracy. It was about two men trying to do their job. One lost their life in the process, and the other one almost lost his life in the process. That's what this case was about. And so for me, it was impactful because I had to do some real soul searching. And I really had to say, this is not about all the good things he did. Mm-hmm. And I will tell you, I got to know his brother, the late Ed Brown, throughout the course of handling this case, because Ed would contact me. Ed sent me books, and I educated myself in the process. But I will tell you what I told Ed. This is not personal. This is absolutely not personal. If Martin Luther King had done what H. Rap Brown was accused of doing, Jamil Al-Amin was accused of doing, I would have prosecuted him as well, because that was my job.
It's a case of humanity, ultimately.
It's a case of humanity, exactly. It's a case of a life that was unjustly taken.
Wow.
And my job was to put the facts up to the jury and let them do what they do. Yeah. And that's what I did. And so for me, it was about right and wrong. And when I go to bed at night, I always want to be on the side of doing what I think is right.
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot of tragedy happening in our communities. And, what do you say to communities? I know you go out, you probably speak, you're asked to go, you're in the community, you attend, of course, your own organization events, other people's events. What do you say to communities to give hope and ensure them that they can actually have impact on the scales of justice? What do you say to them?
So what I say to the community is get involved, be involved. And, we see, and throughout the course of history, we have been known as a people who protest. And protesting is fine. Protesting has its place. But if we are not active members in our community, if we're not volunteering and being a part of those boards and those offices that can make a difference so that we can be the change we want to see in our communities.
Right.
If we are not actively involved in the political process, i.e., researching the candidates that are on the ballot, deciding which candidates you believe worthy of a vote, joining those campaigns, contributing to those campaigns, helping to get the word out so that the right people are in the right places. And then most importantly, exercise your vote.
Yes.
I don't care if it's for dog catcher. Go out and vote.
Go on and say that one more time.
I don't care. I don't care if it's for dog catcher. Go out and exercise your power to vote.
Absolutely.
And let me tell you why I say that, Tommy. Yeah. Because now that I've run a campaign, I know what communities candidates pay attention to and what communities get ignored.
Yeah.
The communities that get ignored are those communities where the candidates know that nobody's going to come out and vote.
Amen to that.
Only going to pay attention to those communities that will vote them out of office.
Yep.
So vote. That's what I would tell folks.
It amazes me we don't get that. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It amazes
we can
me.
protest. There's nothing wrong with protesting. Yeah. But protesting without the power of your vote is just noise.
Yes.
That's all it is.
So true. Again, I just want to say thank you. Honorable Judge Kellie S. Hill, give it up, for stopping by. Thanks for taking a moment. Any shout outs?
You know what? No, I just want to shout out.
I know that's a very legal, the legal term, but
That's what I'm saying. I just want to shout out to everybody. I want to thank you. Thank you for inviting me to be a part of your podcast. I want to shout out to those who are listening. I want to shout out to those who are exercising their votes. And I especially want to shout out to Cobb County, because
Amen.
it is my honor and my pleasure to serve the citizens of Cobb County in this capacity on a daily basis and continue to reach out to the community and be a part of the change that is happening here in our county. So thank you. Thank you. It has been an absolute pleasure. And I look forward to more impactful and insightful conversations.
Yeah, thank you so much. And again, I have to give it up to you. And again, I grew up in Atlanta, so I've gone away and come back a couple of times. But observing, I would have never thought back in the day that Cobb County, of all counties, but it's amazing to me. Growing up in the city of Atlanta and looking outward to see a lot of the change that's occurred in a Cobb County or in a Gwinnett. So. And it's all positive because it's more inclusive and there are more people, as you said, sitting at the table, that's exactly what it's about.
Inclusivity.
Yeah.
That's what, and as you know, the majority of my career was in Fulton and DeKalb counties, but I've lived in Cobb.
Yeah.
And while it would have been easy for me to move to one of those counties and perhaps run for judge where people knew and appreciated my work, I felt like Cobb County needed representation.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of waiting until they were ready.
It is definitely not the low-hanging fruit. That's all I have
It is
to
not.
say.
But you know what? I'm not afraid.
You are not afraid
of uncharted territory.
Well, good for you and congrats. And they've got a good judge in place, Judge Kellie S. Hill, Honorable Judge Kellie S. Hill, Cobb County Supreme Court. Thank you so much. I called you Justice. You're on the way.
And you just put me on the Supreme Court, although I'm on the Superior Court.
Thank you so much, Judge Hill. Thank you so much, and hopefully we can have you back. When things settle down a bit, because this is going to be a roller coaster of a week, and these next few months. We'll wait until everything settles down a bit and have you back. Okay.
It will be my pleasure. We'll just buckle our seatbelt and see what happens moving forward.
Amen to that. Thank you so much, and take care. I appreciate you taking the time. Okay. Thank you.
Absolutely. You have a wonderful evening.
All right. You too.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Judge Kellie S. Hill, Cobb County, and definitely we'll have her back soon. Again, let's go ahead and do news with Syracuse Mike. We'll come back on the other side. And just some amazing information. That Brian Nichols case to this day still touches me, man. It was just what a time. Here we go.
News team, assemble!
It's time for the Week in News with Syracuse Mike.
AURN's Ebony McMorris says President Biden is working to calm fears over growing concerns about the banking industry.
Americans can rest assured that our banking system is safe. Your deposits are safe. Let me also assure you, we will not stop at this. We'll do whatever is needed.
It started Friday with the sudden collapse of Silicon Valley Bank, making the biggest failure since the 2008 financial crisis. The Treasury Department is moving to ensure all SVB deposits will be paid in full with depositors. That bombshell news was followed up on Sunday by federal regulators announcing the closure of New York-based Signature Bank due to what's deemed as systematic risk. For AURN News, I'm Ebony McMorris.
The president has also approved the Willow Oil Project in Alaska against the objections of environmentalists. The move clears the way for one of the largest new oil and gas developments in 20 years on federal land in Alaska. Mitch McConnell was discharged from the hospital Monday and is recovering from his concussion, according to a spokesperson. Communications Director David Popp said in a statement that the Senate Minority Leader's medical team discovered he suffered a minor rib fracture after his fall at a D.C. hotel last week. He added that McConnell's concussion recovery was proceeding well. A judge has sentenced former Clayton County Sheriff Victor Hill to 18 months in federal prison. Hill served as sheriff in Clayton County outside of Atlanta for nearly 15 years before he was indicted in 2021. A jury later found him guilty of using unreasonable force and violating inmates' constitutional rights by strapping them down and leaving them in restraint chairs for hours in some cases. He is also barred from working or consulting in law enforcement. Tuesday, San Francisco's Board of Supervisors, which is similar to a city council, voted unanimously to accept a draft plan from the city's African American Reparations Advisory Committee. The proposal would include a one-time $5 million payment to black residents who are at least 18 and have identified as black or African American on public documents for at least 10 years. Residents must also meet other requirements. Being a descendant of someone enslaved before 1865 is just one of the possible requirements. R&B, jazz, and adult contemporary singer Bobby Caldwell has died. He's best known for the 1978 hit, What You Won't Do for Love. The 71-year-old singer had been in poor health for several years. Former UGA football star Jalen Carter has pleaded no contest to the charges against him in connection to the January crash that killed a teammate and a school staffer. Carter has agreed to 12 months of probation, a $1,000 fine, and 80 hours of community service. Carter's attorney says the deal also means no other charges can be brought against him in this specific case. Carter is still expected to be a top pick in the upcoming NFL draft. The International Criminal Court in The Hague has issued an arrest warrant for Vladimir Putin for overseeing the abduction of Ukrainian children, further isolating the country and sending Russia on the path to become a pariah state. Now, this doesn't mean that he'll be arrested anytime soon, if at all. Russia does not recognize the court and does not extradite its citizens. The Kremlin labeled the ICC's actions as outrageous and unacceptable. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine and his wife were in East Palestine Friday, the community still reeling from the train derailment earlier this year. DeWine said the soil removal in the area is moving quicker than before, but it's never fast enough. He also said Norfolk Southern will be held responsible. That possibly includes for land value losses.
We expect Norfolk Southern to be accountable for that and to fill that, whatever that gap is, so that the school can continue on and does not suffer because of this train wreck.
DeWine said he plans to return to East Palestine next Wednesday to announce a permanent medical facility in the community after residents expressed long-term health concerns. No other men's basketball college team made it this far this season in Georgia. So, while they lost to Xavier 72-67, Kennesaw State led most of the game, and it wasn't a blowout. So, the school has much to be proud of. Head coach Amir Abdur-Rahim.
How about them Kennesaw State Fighting Owls? Man, I am so proud of this group.
And so is the entire state.
Man, how about them Owls? Just shocked me, but Xavier, as a matter of fact, as we taped today, they turned it around and got things back in gear, and they're moving on to the Sweet 16. But man, Kennesaw almost did it, y'all. And again, thank you so much, Judge Hill, Kellie S. Hill. Just thank you so much. Again, great information, great wisdom. Cobb, you've got a good one. Definitely keep her in the system. I think it means a lot of great things for our community. So just great things. Just a couple of things. Silicon Valley Bank. There's an interesting link. Thank you, Lady J sent me a link on I think it was on Facebook that talks about the fact that this is not a normal bank. 90% and above are not of the clients of that bank are not FDIC eligible or covered. So it is a high risk bank. But the crazy thing about it is that these types of banks get bailed out while student loan people are begging for forgiveness before the Supreme Court. Yet these guys can really take a lot of irresponsible investments and place irresponsible investors in these really high risk situations. And one of the big things that occurred in this situation was the fact that the interest rates, I think they didn't count on the interest rates increasing as rapidly. So, just watch it closely. President Biden has promised that this will not receive. This is not a situation where a high-profile bailout will be included. So we'll see. We'll have to watch and see what happens. I don't think it deserves it. I don't look at it as a normal bank. Again, 90% or above of the folks who are actually involved in this bank, have money in this bank, are rich. They're millionaires, billionaires. So, okay, we'll see what happens. And I have to say, environmentalists, the drilling that's happening in Alaska, if environmentalists are so concerned about drilling, why don't they protest the cost of electric vehicles? I mean, that would definitely take the pressure off the need for fuel. But it just seems to me with the electronic vehicle situation right now, the electronic vehicles are $60,000, $40,000, plus a lot of these new vehicles. So, if we can bring down the price of electric vehicles, EVs, then especially make it affordable to the middle class, lower middle class, even those who are with new vehicles, take the fuel vehicles off, electric vehicles, and, we might be able to, become more efficient. So it just shocks me. It's amazing that they'll, protest the fact that we're in a situation where we can actually become less dependent upon foreign oil, but not protest the fact that EVs are too expensive. So we'll see how that works out. And isn't it ironic that Mitch McConnell speaks out against Trump and winds up in the hospital? That just kind of shocks me. I mean, we need to see, that deserves an investigation, because it was like a day or so prior to the fall that he was speaking out against Trump, like really, really tough speak against Trump. So it's just amazing. All of a sudden he winds up in the hospital. We need to look into that. Now I'm moving to San Francisco, y'all. Yes, I am moving. I got to go to San Francisco with the $5 million. But the crazy thing is, I guarantee you that if that were to happen, every good in service is already high in the Bay. But every good in service in San Francisco would go up exponentially if all black folks got $5 million. So we'll see how that goes. I'm hopeful. And rest in power. And I know Tonya B is going to touch on this in the tea. Bobby Caldwell. Again, I'm one of those who grew up in the 80s and never knew he was white until, see him on like the Midnight Special or Video Soul. So rest in power. He had been sick for a while. I think a lot of it had to do, they call it floxing, where he was, I guess it was something related to penicillin. So definitely, rest in power. He's in a better place, and he suffered for a long time. So just rest in power. Jalen Carter was not in shape, by the way. Young man, UGA for the pro day. And he's still going to go high in the draft, but I hope he can get himself together. It seems like he's got some mental issues going on. Hopefully he can get through all this. And the situation that he's in right now is positive for him, because he can't be tried again on anything related to the crash that occurred at the beginning of the year. So hopefully he can get himself together, get his life together, and just focus on football, and become a productive citizen. So good luck to Jalen Carter and his family. And who would have thought Putin and Trump indicted in the same month, y'all? That's just what? So, we'll see. Trump has yet to be indicted, but the Hague is after Putin. So, and they don't acknowledge those courts. So, they're not going to turn Putin over to the Hague for, human rights violations, but we'll see what happens. And one question, I'm going to put this out there. Go to castropolis.net, click the people poll. Do you trust train service? Do you trust train service? If you do, give us your feedback. And I know a lot of these derailments have been freight trains, but anybody who uses passenger trains, I'm just curious about your thoughts on whether or not you still travel and how you feel. Totally different company. I know that's Norfolk Southern that handles the freight, but how do you feel with everything happening with the Norfolk Southern situation? Go to the people poll. Love your feedback. All you got to do is go to castropolis.net. And also that link's in our podcast notes. So there you go. Appreciate you. And again, thank you so much, Judge Kellie S. Hill. Now let's go ahead and do what we normally do. Tonya B is off this week, but she'll be back next week. But let's go ahead and do this.
Now then, children, it's time for tea.
It's tea time, y'all. Sippin' the tea with Tonya B.
I don't want you to miss a thing. This is your girl, Tonya B. And through the magic of technology, sometimes a blessing, sometimes a curse. We know about that, right, Tommy B?
Yes, we do.
Mm-hmm. I'm bringing you the top tea headlines for this week. First, we start with the celebrity prayer list. And I got to say, I think everybody was in shock about the death of blue-eyed soul icon Bobby Caldwell. Hit the scene in the late 70s with What You Won't Do for Love, a signature song that still gets played to this day. But here's the gag. Now, when he went out on his first tour to promote his album, he was the opening act for Natalie Cole. And even as recently as 2013, when he was part of the Blue Eyed Soul tribute on the BET Awards, people didn't know he was white. I'm telling you, his album was in silhouette, so you couldn't tell what he was. And of course, he had a huge hit on the R&B charts with What You Gonna Do for Love, right? But I think he just put out great music, and that's really, I mean, his catalog is amazing. He's been sampled by everybody from Biggie and Nas to Chance the Rapper to Common to John Legend to Boyz II Men, everybody. Just a light in the music world that will be missed, but he leaves again a great music legacy. We're also grieving with Magic Johnson, who's mourning the loss of his father, Irvin Johnson Jr. Lance Reddick, who we know from The Wire and John Wick, died suddenly a few days ago at the age of 60 years young, leaving a wife and 2 children. He was taking a break from promoting the movie, which will still go on. And I gotta tell you, I did not know the name, but when I saw that face with the name, I instantly knew who he was. Lastly, we mourn the loss of one of the, the pioneers of funk, Fuzzy Haskins, one of the original members, P-Funk. They had this song back in the 70s he was really known for. It was called Standing on the Verge of Getting It On. And the opening line is, "Hey lady, won't you be my dog and I'll be your treat and you can pee on me. Rather do that than pee in your afro." Remember that song? Mm-hmm. Well, Fuzzy Haskins passed away this week at the age of 81 years young. And you just got to give George Clinton 5 on it, because everybody in P-Funk was so ahead of their time, and now people are just starting to catch up. So again, Bobby Caldwell, sleep in peace. Fuzzy Haskins, sleep in the funk, So let's talk about celebrity family feuds. Good God, good God. The Scott sisters of Escape, that's Latasha and Tamika, they are playing out their family feud and drama on the TV show The Queens of R&B that they do with SWV. And now they got the mama up in there talking about she's a 5th member of Escape. Lady, I mean, really, Miss Scott? Girl, you reaching. Anyway, Tamika claims her sister Latasha stole $30,000 from her back in the day. And even though Tamika said her sister took the $30K, she still had to pay the $12K and taxes on it. So that whole thing's being played out. I call it the unreality TV show Queens of R&B. Watch if you want to, but I don't get it. In other family feud news, Priscilla Presley has been locked out of Graceland. That's right. She's feuding with her granddaughters, Lisa Marie's daughters, because actually that belonged to Lisa Marie, so her heirs are her daughters. Her son is like, I don't know what's going on here. Lisa Marie was estranged from her husband, the twins, the daughters, dad, and I think he's just looking for a check. But even though Lisa Marie had burned through $100 million, the current value of Graceland today is $35 million. I don't know. No, I did not watch Anatomy of a Hoax. That's a Fox Nation documentary about Jussie Smollett and the African brothers who claim they were paid for their parts in that. And they are just spilling all of his business. They spilling all the business. They said the reason why this whole stunt, and they call it a stunt, which they were acting out during the documentary, the reason why it went wrong, because Jussie Smollett showed up late. So if you have Fox Nation, don't pay for it. You can see it on YouTube. I don't really care, but man, they are just giving him the business. Every time we root for Chris Brown, hope he's gotten himself together. We want him to do well. He's so talented and he's just wasting his talent and just his gift. Well, what I call the most recent installment of the Chris Brown Chronicles goes like this. Unfortunately, and allegedly, there's a young woman named Amika. And she met Chris Brown. The two were kicking it, and they allegedly went on a romantic island vacation, and things went really bad. She's been releasing screenshots of her text exchange with Chris Brown and doing interviews. And right now she is accusing him of beating her so bad that she suffered broken ribs. What I want to know is, if he broke her ribs, how did she get to the hospital to get medical treatment to get home? You know what? It's just a mess, You want to know what else is a mess, Tommy B? Debra Lee, I expected more from you. Now, she's basically, in this book she's got out, I guess she wants to sell books. She was nothing but a high, not even high. Honey, she was in there in the boardroom at BET, dipping it low and spreading it wide, just being a corporate. Well, anyway, I'm just saying. Now, that's a bit far to go to try to, sell books. But yeah, she dropped this bomb that she and BET founder Bob Johnson had a long-standing affair while they were both married to other people. Inquiring minds want to know, was this the reason why Bob Johnson's wife Sheila divorced him and got all the bag? She got the bag. Now, I heard Bob Johnson was not happy when his ex-wife Sheila wrote the book, and I guess she spilled some of his tea. I wonder if Debra Lee alerted Bob Johnson that she was going to put the business out there in them streets. But like I said, Sheila Johnson's winning, and here is why. After she divorced Bob Johnson, that made her the first black female billionaire. Do you know she's part owner of a professional hockey team, an NBA team, and a WNBA team, okay? Again, I say winning. Debra Lee, I expect more from you out there tootsie rolling to try to sell books, and I just say, girl, bye. Oh, but wait, in this book, she's also spilling tea on Oprah and Aretha Franklin. Honey, really gonna come back and get you, Debra Lee. That's just something you just don't do. I hope you learned your lesson, sister. I wouldn't buy that book if it was in the Dollar Tree. I'm just saying. Well, Kenan Thompson's still doing well as the longest running cast member of SNL. And he's gotten back together with his partner from the Nickelodeon days, All That, Kenan and Kel. Had the movie Good Burger 25 years ago, but they're working on Good Burger 2. And I'm wondering what this is really going to be in terms of a sequel, because they're back working a Good Burger 25 years later after having some bad business. Entrepreneurship issues go wrong. It's an issue. But anyway, the movie starts filming in May. Will be released at the end of the year. Also, sidebar, I gotta say, Denzel Washington has signed on to the sequel of The Gladiator. His role is being kept a secret, and it doesn't matter. People are just going to go and see the movie. Well, new mom Keke Palmer, she's back to work. You know what? She and her fiance, her baby daddy, Mr. Jackson, they have an agreement, I guess, and he's going to stay at home and raise the baby Leo. I guess to be a house husband, because after all, she is the breadwinner. But she has just signed a deal to star in and produce a movie with Kevin Hart called The Backup. Now, The Backup is about, a player who decides he wants to settle down, but he wants to go and do this with his childhood friend, I guess, who's Keke Palmer. But when he finds out that she's engaged to somebody else, he tried to break up the thing. Speaking of breaking up the thing, anybody care? Not me. But the people at Dancing with the Stars are like, tootsie goodbye, because Tyra Banks is leaving the show. She claims she wants to focus on her ice cream company, and that remains to be seen. All right, look, that's all I got. If you want any more, listen to the Byrdwire right here on the Castropolis Podcast Network. Friday and Saturday, 8 and 10 p.m. Eastern Time, with the replays every Saturday at noon Eastern. That's all I got. It's your girl, Tonya B. Holla.
Good Lord. The views and opinions expressed are those of Tonya B. Thank you, Tonya B. Appreciate the tea. Wow. Just wow. That's all I got to say. Man. That's all I got to say, Tonya B. I'm not going to say anything else. I'm not going to incriminate my... Not the Dollar Tree. Appreciate you, Tonya B. Thank you so much. Appreciate you for getting that tea in. And before we wrap up the show, I got to do this.
What you watching this week, Tommy B?
Hey, I know y'all are watching Swarm on Amazon. If you're not, it's Donald Glover's new series that just came out. It stars actress Dominic Fishback. If you've seen, I guess the Ptolemy Gray series, she's Robin on the Ptolemy Gray series on Apple. And she's been in several other movies. This is just an excellent project for her. But definitely, it also stars Chloe Bailey, half of the Bailey sisters. And basically, it's about an obsessed Houston-based fan who goes to violent lengths for her favorite R&B singer. And there's no mistaking that it is based on a Beehive, Beyonce, I wouldn't say true story, even though it tries to position itself that way. It's all fiction. It definitely, the Swarm / Beehive, get it. But after watching the full series, I went ahead and binged it. It's short. It's a half hour, 7 episodes. Definitely season 1. I can tell you it's a whole lot deeper than just someone standing for a pop star. And I'm not going to give any spoilers, but if you watch it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. Standout appearances, and these are the folks appearing in this. And I was shocked, definitely Millennial Nick was checking it out. And he was telling me Paris Jackson is in it. The daughter, of course, of Michael Jackson. Billie Eilish is in it. Y'all know Damon Idris if you watch Snowfall. Cree Summer, Cree from Different World, Leon, and Stephen Glover is in it as well, the brother of Donald Glover. And again, it is, if you're a fan of Atlanta, you'll love it because all the shots, all the cinematography, the writing, you could tell it's Donald Glover. And so it's on Amazon currently, all episodes, and we'll see if it's worth it, if it's going to get a season 2. But it is crazy. I don't even know how to describe it. So whether or not if you've seen, what's the movie with The Reading with Monique, it's kind of hard to describe, or The Strays, it's kind of hard to describe this brand of quote unquote horror. If it's comedy, dramedy, lots going on. Also out this week, Ted Lasso, the final season's kicked off this week. Power Book 2, Ghost, Season 3 is out. Second half of You, if you are following the escapades of Joe Goldstein. The second half, if you thought he was sane, you'll think he's crazy again. Don't be fooled. The 10th season of Tyler Perry's House of Pain kicks off as we tape this upcoming Wednesday. And I finally got a chance to watch the new Luther, was it The Son, Fallen Son on Netflix, starring Idris Elba, Cynthia Erivo. And it's definitely worth a watch. It's a good movie. Check it out. Don't forget Unprisoned on Hulu with Kerry Washington, Delroy Lindo, who I forgot was UK, but definitely has nothing to do with him being UK in this. But it's Unprisoned. Kerry Washington and Delroy Lindo plays her father, who was just released from prison. And this Friday on Amazon, Reggie, documentary on Baseball Hall of Famer and activist Reggie Jackson. And a couple of things left over we didn't get to in Tonya B's report. Drake and 21 Savage, It's a Blur Tour, If You Care, kicks off in June. Zaya Wade is on the cover of 2023's spring edition of Dazed magazine. Quentin Tarantino will be filming his final movie, which is crazy considering his age, this fall. And if you're a Bel Air fan, that series on Peacock has been renewed for a 3rd season. And y'all check out, love your feedback on Tone Death, Loss in Hip Hop, which talks to a lot of the moms of these rappers who, all the way from, going back to Biggie and Tupac to Pop Smoke. But Tone Death, Loss and Hip Hop is streaming on Hulu. And, just definitely check that out. You can always give us your feedback on all the stuff we do. Go to castropolis.net. Love your feedback on Judge Kellie S. Hill. Just a great interview. Great. I got to have her back. I know she can't talk about current cases, but she's got a fascinating history and definitely doing great work out there in Cobb County. Just a quick thing on the close as we close the show. This whole Trump thing, and it's really, we'll find out this week if it's much ado about nothing or not. This call to action where he's telling people to protest. Personally, let me just say this to y'all. I feel it's manufactured. This whole, just to get sympathy and get the press to push for, the indictment. I would be shocked if they do it this week. I really think he's doing it for, I guess, sympathy, to pull his voters back, to get them engaged for his campaign. So I doubt. I mean, we'll see. We'll see. I'll be eating my words next week, but we'll see. But I do think cities, municipalities need to be on guard and get engaged and treat this like post 9/11 because domestic terrorism is real. in America is definitely real. Let's not get caught up in the drama. And for black folks, not our circus, not our monkey. Just get out the way, okay? Again, final thoughts. Big thanks again to the Honorable Judge Kellie S. Hill, Cobb County Superior Court. Thank you so much for coming out. Happy 137th anniversary, Ebenezer Baptist Church, home of Senator Warnock. And definitely go follow us. Follow the show on social media. We especially need more love on the YouTube channel. I will just admit, I have not been putting the love into YouTube. So you help me by putting the love into YouTube. And you can search us. Our handle on YouTube is @ThisIsTheG Podcast. And also you can check our tapings for those of you who might be viewing my mug on YouTube every week. Definitely give us a shout out. And the live tapings are every Sunday at 6 p.m. Stream us also for those who are still streaming us at radiojarcastropolis.net. Appreciate it. But also, if you are on YouTube, make sure you subscribe. Hit subscribe. Go ahead and hit that bell and make sure you're on the show. Follow us on Twitter at ThisIsTheGPod. Everything else is This Is The G Podcast, except for Twitter, who definitely wants to be difficult at all times. That's it. And with that, y'all, episode 168. Thank you so much for all the support. We appreciate you. The folks are back next week. Tonya Byrdwire, and we appreciate you. Episode 168 is in the can. Peace, power to the people. Have a great week, y'all. Stay warm.
You've been listening to the G Podcast with your host, Tommy B. The G Podcast is a production of the Castropolis Podcast Network. Thanks for listening.